Good to see you again. Thanks for joining me. I have been working on a shawl for my mother-in-law, and things aren't going great. I got to almost the end of the first ball, and I just can't go further. The colors of this pattern I chose haven't melded together like I wanted. The yarn I'm using is amazing. I love it so much. It's Hobie's Cotton King Sultan Rose Tourmaline. That's number 45. It's 100% cotton. It weighs 200 grams or 7.1 ounces. Yarn length is 800 meters or 875 yards. Yarn weight is fine. Recommended needles 2 millimeter to 3.5 millimeter in knitting. Crochet hooks are 3.5 millimeters and to 4 millimeters. Machine wash, do not tumble dry. This cotton cake is made up of 4 threads. When all together, the colors will gradually change, as one will change and the other 3 will not change right away. However, I felt that for this hotter season, the cotton used with all 4 threads together is much heavier than I had in mind. So I took the time and made the one ball into 2, with 2 threads each. So the color change is a bit more pronounced. However, I still not ugly. I do not like it when the 2 colors combine for I do like it when the 2 colors combine for a stitch. Just not with this particular pattern. With this particular color, we go from an antique pink to a darker, more blue infused pink to white, light gray to dark gray. The change between the pinks and the white is a bit intense. Fortunately, it didn't work with the pattern I first chose. Enchanting Eva by Willamade. I have frogged the whole thing. I just couldn't get behind it the way it was working out. I still am going to make this amazing pattern. I'm actually thinking about which of my beautiful cakes to use. I'm considering using my Hobie Sultan Shadow Black/Indigo number 17 or my Dahlia Halloween Limited Haunted House number 2. I do love this pattern. It is very challenging, but wow, is it ever delicate. I've decided with the way the colors change, I'm going to go with the Willamade's Bella Vita shawl instead. It's a bit less frills, and I feel like this will be able to showcase the beauty of the yarn. So, random craft time from over a year ago. Sometimes we get Barbies. We buy them used or given to us, and their hair is gross. This one had so much gel in her hair it was hard and crusty. I tried washing it out, the gel. No luck. I tried to soften up the fibers with fabric softener. No luck. So I did some looking and thought maybe I could just give her some new hair. My middle girl chose bright neon pink and purple highlights. First thing I did was chop off that sticky, crispy, filmy hair off. Then, using tweezers, pulled the hairs out of the bottom of the head. This one was fairly straightforward. The second one was one of the grossest things I've ever had to deal with, and I used to clean toilets for a living. It was thick, waxy, gunky, and stuck to everything. So the hair came out, and now she is bald. They are made with holes all over the head to pull the hair through. I know you can buy new hair, but we have the yarn here, so yarn it is. Now I string my cut length of yarn, and now with a yarn darning needle, I force the needle through and pull it. We knot it at the end on the inside of the head. After it's fully rehaired, and we take my trusty glue gun and we fill the head with glue. Let the glue dry and pull the yarn to see if it will budge. My favorite part is the unwinding of the fibers. In this case, we kept her hair long and crimpy. There is a way to brush it out, I've heard, but I haven't found out for myself yet how it holds up. I have another 3 more to go. This one was so funny. I we brushed her hair and it all just came out. So, new hair it is. I found this sweater a couple years ago in a thrift store. I've tried to make it work for me, but it isn't the right fit for me. The wrists are too tight, the neck is too tight. I do love the shiny yarn, so I'm taking it apart for the yarn. I wasn't expecting to be so fine and frizzy, so I'm taking my time not to wreck it. This is not my first time taking apart a piece of clothing that's been store-bought or an Afghan that I've come across at the thrift store that was slightly damaged or just given to me because someone figured I'd probably be able to use it instead of throwing it away. I like repurposing things that have very little life left to them. I have a stack of t-shirts and whatnot that I cut up as stuffing. I'm hoping at some point soon to start doing some cotton plarns, which is basically making yarn out of strips of cotton shirts and maybe making some nice little rugs for around the house. I need to replace the one underneath my dining room table, being that my children eat on it for the last 12 years. The thing is just a mess and it's not savable. So I'd like to do something a little more brightly colored and a little more eclectic, I think. Okay, here we are with a very vintage book, Interchangeable Yarns, the McCall's Guide. This is something that went for $2.50. My mom and grandma always had this around. Copyright from 1982. Big fan of the McCalls. I was just really surprised to see this in my pile of vintage magazines that my mother and I, between us, have for crochet, cross stitch. Now this has giving you ideas of knitting needles and their sizes, different yarns to replace with each other. Now that we have the internet, it's a lot easier. This is just a little example of back in the day how you would have to really work hard to find yourself a replacement. And it was really neat to look at different names, like Red Heart was owned by JP and Coates. Most people nowadays probably have no idea the JP and Coates company is or was. And that's for our bigger ones. And we go down to how to measure your gauge, needle sizes, measuring your gauge, how to measure your people for your patterns, where to measure them, what size, which of course you can always Google now, and misses. I love that. Knitting needles and their sizes, you would just hold your needle right up next to it to see if it lines up. And your crochet gauges, what sizes they would be. You hold your crochet against the shadow to see if it's too big or too small. And then you got your sizing, which means this was basically a cheat sheet. So you wouldn't have to try to figure this out on your own because, of course, nobody had the internet back then. How to conversion tables, because of course you need to do your maths to be able to crochet. And then back here we have a whole bunch of addresses to get a hold of our companies if there was any issues. But I grew up with this book always around, and I always wondered what it was like, and I asked my mom, and she was super happy I found it because she had misplaced this one. And yeah, so she took it back from me right after I found it. But she said that it was a great guide for making sure that you have the right size needles and crochet hooks, and they could not do what they wanted to do without it. On top of rushing to get Easter finished, some videos edited, and just being a mom, I reorganized my bedroom. I've created a lovely corner that is fully usable to be my main office or workspace. The table won't be able to hold my sewing machine, so I think maybe a folding table might be a good idea. I don't use it all the time. My closet has most of the scrap materials and other loose odds and ends, so it's my next big task. Once I have it under control, I am bringing down the crafting magazines and having them where I can get to them all the time. So just an update on my lovely thrift haul. So far, my husband and son have checked the local thrift shop about 3 times, and nope, nothing. So I have 7 out of 10. I'm still super pleased with them. I love the linen color, so I'm thinking maybe a granny square cardigan for me for the fall winter seasons. However, that could change closer to the time I actually start the project, being that it's got a few ahead of it. So, my dear son loves to see what I'm going to make next, even if it's not for him. So he grabbed me 2 balls of yarn that I do not have. First up, we have this fluffy, fancy Bernay Harmony, jet black in color. Very squishy, soft, reminds me of my gray and purple mystery yarn. I think they're going to pair up very nicely for something interesting. Bottom of the label says, a symphony of color and texture. Got a free pattern here for a ripple afghan. This yarn is 100% acrylic. Net weight is 100 grams, 3.5 ounces. 184 yards, 169 meters. 5mm knitting, 5mm crochet. Machine wash and dry. And this baby is made in Canada. I'm really liking the idea of pairing this skein up with my mystery yarn. I will have to give it some research. Maybe have to dig into my vintage magazines to find something classic and cozy. Or maybe leg warmers. I really want to do some slouchy leg warmers. I have to wear more than one pair of pants when it gets cold and I'm walking kids to school in the morning. I might just find some super cheap, brightly colored yarns, being that leg warmers can lose their shape really fast. And who knows if I'll even like leg warmers and actually wear them. Or if it's one of those pieces that I like to think would look good and be functional, but then in reality, I'm not in love with them. Ball number 2 is a bit smaller. Bernay Baby in the color of antique white. Got a pattern for a baby blanket on the label. Pretty little lacy blanket. Doubt I'll make it though. Super fine fingering weight 1. 90% acrylic, 10% nylon. 175 meters, 191 yards, 50 grams, 1.7 ounces. 3.5mm knitting, 3.25mm crochet, machine washable. Cute tiny little yarn. I'm a bit stumped it's a lot smaller weight than anything else I have. I'm not sure what I want to do with this one. I will find something. Maybe I can use it with my 30 weight threads that I have. Bags of those that I have, even not sure what I'm going to do with those either. Thank you so much for joining me. Leave me a comment if you have any ideas of what to make with my new yarns.